What's up, guys? It is Paddy here without Gary. We're starting a new kind of section to the overall social stuff that we do. So this is both an audio recording and a video recording, and it's going to go on YouTube and it's going to go on the podcast itself. So you're probably listening or viewing in one of those two places. You may also be reading the associated article on our website, because what we're trying to do now is reach as many people as possible and help as many people as possible. And I know a lot of people are kind of more visual learners, more like they like to listen to some stuff, maybe they like to read some stuff, maybe people like to need to get a bit more hands-on with their information. So we're trying to provide as diverse a content as we possibly can to hopefully help more people with their issues, you know. So you're going to be able to find this content on YouTube, you're going to be able to find this content on the podcast, and you're going to be able to find an article that discusses the content that we talk about on our actual website itself, triagemethod.com. So what we want to do is get questions from the viewers, our following, and answer those questions. It's pretty straightforward concept, pretty easy concept to kind of get. And in today's episode, what we're going to do is talk about a question, or rather a comment that we kind of frequently get, and that is to do with using the scales as your method of tracking your weight, because there are some issues with the scales itself, and a lot of people seem to put their entire worth or their entire value as a person, they have it really tied up with the number that is represented on the scales, which is a little bit sad to hear, because realistically that number on the scales is just your representation, or just the representation of your relationship with gravity, and it doesn't actually tell you about anything about the value of you as a person. So the scales, is it bad? Is it good? Well, it's kind of neither. It's simply a tool in your toolbox. It shouldn't be viewed as a negative thing. It should be viewed simply as a metric that you can track that could potentially help you towards your overall goals. Okay, so the scales and your weight, or rather your weight on the scales, can be influenced by a lot more than what you think it's going to be influenced by. Because what a lot of people do is they go on some online calculator, they enter in their numbers, their height, their weight, their activity, blah blah blah, whatever else, and it spits out some calories and goes, this is what you should be eating to lose at X rate per week. Or people will have an idea in their head of, I want to lose weight and I want to lose as much as possible, as fast as possible. Or they'll go, I want to lose roughly this amount every week. Or on the opposite side of things, people want to gain weight, and they do the same kind of thing. They do a calculator, it says eat this much, you'll gain this much. They have an idea in their head, they're like, oh yeah, I want to gain this much weekly, monthly, etc. So you have an idea in your head, and you're tracking your calories, or you're eating in a manner that you think will get you towards whatever end point it is that you want to achieve, and you step on the scales. It's not telling you what you want to see. You know, it's not showing you all the hard work that you've put in, you know. And maybe the 2-3 days beforehand you've been bang on track, you were feeling great, you were in a nice groove with things. You step on the scales on whatever Thursday morning, and your week is ruined. You kind of go, fuck it, like it's the weekend almost now, so I'm just gonna start next Monday, because clearly I don't know what I'm doing, clearly my plan of action is crap and I'm useless, you know, all because of one measurement on the scale, one time point on the scale. You know, it's not giving you a valid representation of all the hard work that you've done, because there's so many variables that go into making up your day-to-day weight, the fluctuations in your day-to-day weight, that using that solely as your means of progress is going to misrepresent how you are actually progressing. Because, for example, you step on the scales right now, you go downstairs, you drink a liter of water, you step on the scales, boom, you're a kilo heavier. You know, you eat more fiber one day, next day you wake up, boom, you're a couple of kilos heavier, a couple of 100 grams heavier maybe. You go eat a few extra carbs one day, maybe you're out with friends and it was at a different restaurant than you're used to, had more sodium than you're used to, you step on the scales, boom, it's up again. Okay, there's so many other variables that we can consider as well. You sleep poorly one night, you've got extra stress in your life. You know, there's so many things that go into it that using one time point as your sole focus is missing the forest for the trees. And this is really exacerbated by the fact that people aren't actually standardizing their measurements in terms of they're not doing it at the same time of day. People will wake up in the morning, measure it, cool, we got that. The next morning they'll wake up, they'll go downstairs, have their breakfast and go, oh, I need to get my measurement. They'll jump on the scales. The next day it's like, oh, I did it in the afternoon. Oh, I did it in the evening today. Oh, this is a weekend day. And normally I get up at 6 a.m. but today I slept in till 11 and I'm going to take my weight then. And it's like there's so much variability, it's up and it's down, that you're not actually standardizing your measurement. So if you were to look at a scientific study that did that, you would just kind of go, well, that's a pretty poor scientific study. So you as an individual, you need to standardize that measurement. But you also need to realize that there's a lot that goes into it that you simply can't fully account for. Like, unless you're living in some sort of metabolic ward where your stressors are perfectly the exact same, your input, your diet is the exact same, your output is the exact same, your sleep is standardized, as many variables as possible are perfectly standardized. And I don't know about you, but I don't know anyone that lives like that in the real world. We all have stressors, we all have day-to-day variations. Maybe you got a little bit poorer sleep one night because it was a little bit hotter out. Maybe, you know, you were out with friends a little bit later. Maybe you had food in a different place. There's so many different things that could go into it that your life is not going to be 100% the exact same day to day. Even if you may feel like you're in a rut where you just do the exact same thing every day, you're realistically not doing the exact same thing every single day. Okay, so your weight is going to be your weight is then going to reflect that day-to-day variation in your lifestyle. You know, and this is especially if you're eating different foods every day. Like, this is one kind of good thing about strict meal plans where it's like, I'm eating the exact same thing every single day, because you're essentially just standardizing that variable and there's no change there, no change in the actual input, different fibers, different food sources, different maybe portion sizes, it's all the exact same. So your weight is a lot steadier as a result. However, it's pretty boring to eat like that, and most people find that's too restrictive to actually then get results, because eating the same thing every single day is not enjoyable and realistically it's not required for results. So why would you kind of do it? Anyway, the weight itself shouldn't be your sole determinant of your success. You should be using a variety of measures to actually track how you are progressing. Like, we generally recommend people weigh themselves every day, and that's purely so we can get a longer time frame, a longer kind of trend in how that weight is moving, rather than just looking at one transient time point and going, oh, well, this is where we're at. No, we want to look at a few time points and then see how the weight is moving over time. So maybe you think, oh, I've been in the low 70 kilos for weeks, for months, and you look at your trend line and it's kind of going, yeah, you started at 73 and like week on week you've lost 100 grams and you're now at 70.2, and it's like, yeah, okay, cool, like I realize maybe that's not the rate of fat loss that you wanted, but looking at the overall picture we can see that you are actually moving in the direction that you want to, you know. So if you are using the scales and perhaps maybe it's your only measurement that you're using, the day-to-day variations, forget about them. What we're looking at is weekly, monthly, yearly. We're looking at the longer time frame with all of that. And this is pretty easy these days when you have apps like MyFitnessPal, or I use HealthMate, but like there's loads of apps that you can use to kind of track your weight, and it will track it and then it will create a trend line for you. So you don't need to even be an Excel wizard to be able to kind of input these data points and then get a trend line, you know? So you have apps available, use them. Use it to see, okay, well, yeah, maybe I thought I was actually plateaued, but I can actually clearly see that I am still losing weight. Or, yeah, cool, that Wednesday my weight was way up, but it went straight back down. And, you know, maybe that's because I had that sushi the day before and it was really high on salt, and that was probably realistically what caused the weight fluctuations rather than a lack of actual progress, you know? So that's what I would kind of be thinking in terms of using the weight as your metric for weight loss or fat loss, because realistically at the end of the day, people aren't actually looking for weight. Like, the weight is a representation of what they really want, and sometimes it's not even a good representation of what they really want, because what people really want is a physique. They want a certain look. They want to look in the mirror and go, that's what I want to look like when I see myself. I want to look, you know, big, muscular, or lean, toned, or whatever it is. You have a certain physique, a certain look in your mind's eye that is what you want to achieve. So if I told you I could just wave a magic wand and you're going to weigh the exact same, but you're going to look like that, would you care? Most people wouldn't care. Most people would kind of go, yeah, realistically, the weight is irrelevant to me. If I look like that, happy days. And I'm not just talking to women here, I'm talking to men as well, because you'll see women generally on trend towards the lower side of things. Like, they're like, oh, I have to be 55 kilos, I have to be that weight, or I have to be below 60 kilos, or whatever arbitrary weight it is, they have to be below that for whatever reason. But guys, they tend to do kind of two things. Like, they won't diet, even though that's actually what's required to get them to the physique that they want, because they have an arbitrary number in their head where it's like, oh, no, I couldn't get below 100 kilos. That's skinny, like, you know. And it's like, okay, cool, well, you're going to be shredded at 95 kilos, so, you know, maybe you just dip below that 100 kilos, that arbitrary number in your head, and then actually look the way you want to look, you know. Same with the opposite side of things. Rather than chasing the physique that they want, they're saying they want to build muscle, they want to look a certain way, they start chasing scales weight. And like, yeah, okay, cool, you gained 20 pounds over the last 12 weeks, but 18 of those pounds was fat, and your physique didn't change. Well, your physique changed, but it changed for the worse, and you didn't add any lean tissue, you know. So I'm not just talking to the women here, I'm talking to the guys too. You should be looking at the overall trend in the weight, and then you should be comparing that to other measurements, other metrics, if I could speak. So what we generally like is the weight. We also like the visual kind of method, so either that's progress pictures or it's just you looking at yourself in the mirror. Generally, I don't like the looking at yourself in the mirror, although some people kind of go, yeah, I know visually I'm on point. I don't like it purely because you've no standardization, you can't track that over time, and then also it's really dependent on your mood that day. Especially for women, like, you could be, I don't know, week 3, week 4 of your cycle, looking at yourself going, I hate myself, I'm 10 ton tessie, and you're looking at progress pictures from like last month, the exact same time, and it's like, this is night and day difference. Like, you were 100% leaner. So I don't like the kind of day-to-day looking at myself, oh, have I made progress? I just like progress pictures, so I can be like, okay, cool, yeah, I felt like shit, I felt like I looked like shit, but when I compare it to 2 weeks ago, yeah, man, I'm definitely progressing, you know. So I like to have the actual visual, like, oh, it's there, I can see it in front of me, I can compare it to a time point in the past, you know. So that's one that I would also use. Also, measurements, waist measurements, a really easy one. Like, you need a tape measurement, put it around your waist, because realistically the majority of you are not building so much muscle on your abdominals that, you know, you're gaining an inch there. Most of you just simply aren't, you know. And I like tape measurements, and I also like tape measurements for other body parts, because realistically, if you're looking to gain muscle, you're probably looking to gain muscle in some specific or key areas for you, and using that as, or using weight as a proxy for physique development isn't telling you the whole story. If you're saying, I need to grow my calves, and yeah, cool, you put on 10 kilos, but your calves are the exact same size, it's completely irrelevant because you didn't achieve your actual goal. You know? Especially if you're comparing it then to the waist, and the waist has gone up and the calves have not. So it just looks like you've gained those 10 kilos of fat all around the waist. So generally that's what I would kind of be looking at when I'm kind of looking at tracking over time. I'd be saying, what are the measurements I need to track to actually achieve the goals that I'm trying to achieve, rather than just going, oh, weight is the only proxy that I can use. Women as well, you have an easy one in dress sizes. If you're going, okay, cool, this top, this dress feels a little bit tight, this is size 16 and I'd like to be a size 12, you then know, okay, cool, I can then move along that bracket and kind of go, yeah, okay, cool, this size 12 now is a perfect fit. So you obviously know you've moved in the right direction. And generally clothes, you wear them every day, so if you're wearing a top and it feels a little bit tight, 3 weeks later feels a little bit looser, you kind of know that you're on the right track with everything, you know. And there's hundreds of other measurements that you could potentially use, hundreds of other metrics that potentially you could track. They're generally the ones I like to use the weight. It is a valid method. It doesn't tell you the whole story, but it does give you a general indication of how you are moving, if you are moving in the right direction or the wrong direction. I also like waist measurement. I also like the visual. I also like, you know, something that's really easy, like the clothes fitting, perhaps even like getting compliments off people. That's always a beneficial one. But they're the kind of ones that I like to kind of track and kind of go, yeah, that'll give me a good round picture of how I'm moving. And it doesn't mean I have to be solely dependent on purely the weight itself, because that's the issue with most people. They get so caught up in just the weight itself, just looking at that one isolated measurement and having no points of reference to kind of validate if that is actually moving them in the right direction, you know. And again, they're also looking at it in that transient here and now. Right now, today, I'm not exactly where I want to be, and I was feeling on track the last few days, but this has gone up. And then they just completely forget that they aren't living in this perfect bubble world where everything is standardized and everything is the exact same. They forget that there's so many variables that go into weight, that using the day-to-day fluctuations to kind of inform your choice is a pretty poor method. And generally what we like to do is see someone plateaued for 2 to 4 weeks before we make a change, because especially if you're a woman, you're going to see like a huge amount of fluctuation in the menstrual cycle that you just simply can't account for day to day. And you want to see that, okay, cool, I've compared like week to like week and now I realize that I'm on track, rather than I'm comparing like week 4 to week 1 and going, oh well, what's the difference here? Like, did I lose a lot of fat? Was it water? Like, I like to see a longer time period and kind of go, that's how on track I am. And using like 2 to 4 weeks is a good kind of metric or timeline to kind of go, yeah, okay, cool, we've actually been plateaued or just barely losing or barely gaining for 2 weeks, so we know roughly we're at kind of maintenance level calories now, or maybe slightly below them, and we can kind of adjust from there. But if we kind of go every single time the scales goes up, we just are reactionary and we go, yeah, 200 calories less, in whatever 6 weeks you're going to be down at 1,000 calories and going, oh, I'm not losing weight, I'm super stressed out, I'm starving, and you know, my binging has got worse. And it's like, it's just a recipe for disaster. Whereas if you take a slower approach and kind of look at it on the longer time frame and kind of go, yeah, I realize that my scales weight, it's fluctuating up and down, but when I look at the trend line, I am overall trending in the right direction, because that's what you want to do ultimately. Anyway, the article goes into a little bit more depth on a few things, so if you do want to read that, the link is going to be below in the description box on YouTube and the description box in the podcast. Anyway, guys, we will likely have like a form up on site or something along those lines to make the process of getting questions in a little bit easier. But if you, for whatever reason, kind of go, I just want to, I don't know, remain less anonymous, I want you to know I'm asking the question, or you having a question and we haven't set up the form yet, you can always contact us either on Instagram, email, like any of our social media. Like, we'll get the question, we can answer it on here, we can make a video. We generally are answering questions daily anyway, so if you do have any questions, we are there to answer them, because ultimately that's what we want to do. We want to provide good content. We want to help you guys achieve your goals. Anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap it up here. If you do have any questions about the format, if you like this format, let us know. Because I genuinely think if we can get a lot of questions in and have a lot of podcasts, YouTube videos and the like on this, it actually gives you a huge resource. Whoa, my voice just went. It actually gives you a huge resource for actually answering your question. However, what I would suggest before, because I know people are going to be listening to this in like 6, 8, 9 months time and kind of going, oh cool, I'm going to drop in my question. If your question has been answered, we're either going to just link you Google and tell you to search it, or we'll be a little bit nicer and just link you the answer to your question. Because most people send in questions and they don't do a simple Google search like triage method and a question, or triage method and whatever topic it is, and realize that, okay, cool, we've actually written like 30 articles on this, and I'm not going that we're like we simply can't just explain those 30 articles to you in one answer to your question when it goes so in depth. So if your question has been answered before, do yourself a favor and just do a quick Google search on it. It saves us time, and ultimately it saves you time, because we're just going to send you the link to that article, which you could have got yourself. So you're waiting whatever, a day, 2 days for us to reply back to you, whereas you could get the answer straight away if you just did a little Google search. Anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap it up here. If you like this, do let us know. Peace out, guys.